thank you for joining us to this panel, 10 panel on the reintegration of IDPs, refugees and veterans into civilian life. Thank you for being here with us. We have quite a good mix of guests today. We have two guests from, there will be via VTC from Kiev, and we have 3 guests here with quite a great mix. So if you let me to introduce our speakers. So via VTC there will be Mr. Oleg Szymanski. He's the Deputy Minister of the Ministry for Veteran Issues of Ukraine. He is mostly in charge with digitalization services and creating digital services for the veterans. Also via VTC we'll have Ms. Iryna NYKORAK. She's a member of parliament, subcommittee of veteran rehabilitation. She has a great experience in working projects, programs for, especially for Ukrainian women, for women veterans. Here with us, I'm very happy to welcome here Mariia KOROLCHUK. She's one of the leaders of, let's say, Ukrainian refugees in Romania. She's very active in different organizations, different initiatives. One of her achievements is, among many others, she has drafted a manual for refugees for the Romanian authorities because her experience is invaluable in this matter. She's very active here in Bucharest and in Romania, promoting refugee problems and issues in Romanian society. So thank you very much for being here. The next speaker is Mr. Adam EBERHARDT. He's one of the leading Polish experts in Eastern European issues. A lot of expertise and experience on Eastern Europe, but particularly on Belarus, Russia, Ukraine. A lot of activity. He's now a deputy director of this Center for East European Studies. He's a scholar. Numerous articles, books, but also a lot of advising jobs for policymakers. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have here Khrystyna DUDASHVILI. She's from Lviv. She's an NGO activist. Mostly her work with this recovery camp. It's services and assistance for IDPs, refugees, and all vulnerable persons as a result of this war. So thank you very much for being here. Again, I want to emphasize that we have all the participants come from different parts. So we have government official, we have member of parliament, we have NGO activists, we have academic, researcher, scholar. So we should have different perspective on this issue of veterans. And before I give the floor to our first guest, just let me a few words. When we speak about IDPs, refugees, and veterans in Ukraine, the statistics are quite compelling. So what we have now, 1.3 million veterans. We have almost 4 million of internally displaced persons all over Ukraine. And we have 6 million refugees outside Ukraine. And of course, as much as the war is going forward, these numbers are only increasing. And we all speak about the wars, line of conflict, drones, aligning our economies to move forward. These social issues, these silent issues of veterans, of IDPs, of refugees, which are not always gaining public attention, are actually one of the most serious and pose the most threats to our societies. So, and yesterday there was Adam was a chair of a panel who also addressed issues of labor market and human capital in Ukraine. And somehow a lot of issues that we'll discuss here have been also discussed or mentioned yesterday. Reconstruction of Ukraine, it's based also on reintegration of veterans, IDPs, and of course of return of some refugees. Somehow I start with a conclusion, but I stop here and I give the floor to Mr. Oleg Szymanski, Deputy Minister of Veteran Affairs. If it's with us, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Răzvan, and thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate this to speak at this panel. Let me first outline an important nuance that is different in Ukraine than most of the NATO countries, is that we define veterans legally as combat veterans, and that means that veterans are those who have served on the very front line in a direct engagement. So not only those who have just been to the military. And the specificity of that legal regime is that a person becomes a veteran once they have served in the direct engagement, and they keep serving in the military before their demobilization. And as you have correctly mentioned, Ukraine already has 1.3 million, in fact a little bit more, 1.5 million of those. And to put things in perspective, UK has 1.8 million of veterans, but those are all of the veterans so individuals that have served at least one day in the military. And that's why Ukraine has a much larger number of combat veterans that understand what combat is, and therefore they have very specific, unique experience, and they have unfortunately been exposed to a very specific trauma. And I'll speak why that's important in the future. But what's important, I think, is to separate veterans from other vulnerable groups. Veterans don't treat themselves as a vulnerable group. They don't like to be treated as a vulnerable group. And in fact, what we observe is that they are a group with a very specific experience that requires certain support based on that experience, but they can also offer this fighting experience to our counterparts. Now, the next thing that I'd like to mention is that when it comes to reintegration, we'd like to move from a purely social perspective, where we'd like to, make do with the veterans that have served and, protected the very existence of this country, and look at the potential future recovery and specifically economic recovery of Ukraine. Since 2022, over 1 million of individuals have joined the military, and that means that they have moved from a civilian labor market onto the military, and that means the government payroll. And that's also why, in future, we'd like to restore the human capital in the civilian labor market. We'd like to reintegrate these individuals back into the civilian life and provide them with work opportunities that will enable them to live long, fulfilling lives. Because again, compared to many NATO countries where veterans are significantly older, so in Europe, most of the veterans are over 50 or over 60 years old. In Ukraine, the median is about 30 years old, and there are very young veterans. Some of them have never done anything else besides serving in the military, and that's why they have their whole lives in front of them, and we need to build programs that will cater to these fulfilling lives after serving in the military. And our friends in Croatia have seen this. Their independence war ended in '95, and their veterans were very young at the time, but they have been implementing veteran support programs since 1995 for 30 years. And the nature of these programs have been changing over the 30 years based on the needs of the veterans and where they are in their lives. Ukrainian civilian labor market has seen a significant demand for labor. In fact, our unemployment rate in 2022 was about 20%, so quite high. But in 2023 it was already 13, and 2024 it was already 12%. So we have a significant demand for labor, and that's why the companies, and we are talking to big businesses and small businesses every day, they are saying that for them, there is a business case, there's a business logic to invest into veterans reintegration and adaptation of the workplace in order to tap into this group's potential as a part of their working population. So altogether, we have, as a government, enacted a veterans support strategy in late 2024. It has three main pillars. The first one is restoring human capital, and that means physical and mental rehabilitation that leads to economic opportunities, reskilling, ability to start a business. The second pillar is remembrance, and this is how we communicate to the society and how the society perceives veterans. And I think it's a very important part of the work, because we'd like veterans to be reintegrated, but we also know that the wider society doesn't necessarily understand how to treat them. Do we pay them respect every time we see them on the street? Do we try to help an amputee when he tries to enter a building, or do we not? How do we empower them? I think our society doesn't yet realize how to interface with these individuals. And the third pillar is defense. Again, linking to what I've said in the beginning, veterans have a very unique set of skills, a very unique set of experience that they have obtained on the front. This is something that we can share with our civilians, with the civilians and reserves and the militaries of the region, of our friends in Eastern Northern Europe, and that will potentially cater to the overall defense of the whole region. And we'd very much like to spread this experience and to offer something in return for all the support that our partners have provided. So this is where we are. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Oleg. I pass the floor now to Iryna. Please, we are listening for your presentation.
Dear distinguished guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, it's okay to tell.
All good, all good. We can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much for this invitation and for the very valuable opportunity to speak today. When we talk about reintegration, we often treat it as something that happens after the war, after displacement, after service ends. But my experience as a Ukrainian MP, as a policymaker working on veterans affairs, and as a founder of the social initiative of Armed Women Now, tells me something very different. Reintegration begins long before the uniform comes off and long before a refugee crosses the border back home. Ukraine is living through the largest war in Europe in generations. And as you already mentioned, we have 5 million internally displaced people, 7 million of refugees abroad, and 1.3 million of veterans. And according to the Ministry of Veterans forecast, we are going to have 5 or even 6 million of veterans, together with the families of those who are lost in war. And taking into account the demographic situation in Ukraine, means that 15 or even 20% of Ukrainian society will be veterans as participants of combat mission together with their families. And here is the first truth we must accept. Reintegration is not a social problem. It is a national security issue. If reintegration fails, societies fracture. If reintegration succeeds, society becomes resilient. And today we are talking about important steps for a smooth transition back into civilian life. And in my opinion, the first step is restoring predictability and provide dignity. It means immediate access to housing, healthcare, and income, alongside psychological support that treats trauma as, unfortunately, a normal consequence of war, but not a weakness. Reintegration must start before demobilization or return, with clear pathways for work, education, and community belonging already in place. From my work with veterans, the first step is restoring a sense of control over one's life, starting with documents, economic independence, rehabilitation process, and housing. Veterans need clear, simple pathway, not 10 institutions and 30 certificates. And psychological support should be embedded in everyday services, not separated as something for the broken. When we're talking about employment, I want to say that it's not only about income. It is about identity and dignity after service. And what I find important, that integration of combat experience into civilian professions. In Ukraine, it is the process of transforming military skills and competencies into valuable ones for the labor market, which includes a system of recognition of qualifications, development of mechanisms for comparing military and civilian competencies, and special support programs, and most importantly, creating a favorable work environment through communication without stigmatization, heroization, or pity, so that veterans can effectively use their knowledge in security, logistics, management, and other areas, becoming valuable personnel, not people with specific needs. Also, when we are talking about reintegration, adaptation back to civilian lives, families must be included, because reintegration does not happen to individuals alone. Local communities need preparation, not just veterans themselves, especially when we're talking about inclusion and non-barrier environment. And the most important first step is listening to veterans as partners, not beneficiaries. This year, Ukraine adopted a law on veteran entrepreneurship, which directly addresses one of the most critical dimensions of reintegration, its economic independence. This legislation introduces a specific economic support regime for veteran-led businesses, recognizing entrepreneurship as a powerful tool for dignity, stability, and long-term reintegration. The law provides concrete mechanisms of support, including grants, subsidies, compensation for rent and utilities, and funding for equipment, as well as preferential access to credit and investment instruments, including those supported by international financial institutions. It also enables non-competitive access to state and municipal property and introduces quotas for veteran businesses in industrial parks and technology hubs. Importantly, it establishes structured education, training, mentoring, and advisory support for veterans and demobilized service members who wish to start or grow their own businesses. Through a social initiative, which I founded in 2022, Armed Women Now, we work directly with women serving at the front, women returning from combat, and women trying to rebuild their lives while carrying trauma, responsibility, and leadership experience. And what we hear again and again in this, women veterans do not want pity. They want systems that work. They return from the front having commanded units, coordinated evacuations, managed logistics under fire, and suddenly they are treated as if they have no skills at all. This is why we insist that reintegration must be planned, structured, and gender sensitive. And as I mentioned already before, that 15 or 20% of Ukrainian society will be veterans together with their families. And we need to realize that veterans will be the one and only generation who was fighting for Ukraine's independence and who will be involved in all recovery processes in post-war period.
Thank you very much, Iryna, for this quite interesting presentation. And both you and Oleg underline all these economic, social, health issues that are facing veterans, and of course, all your work you have done in this field, because you are front runners of supporting veterans in Ukraine. Oleg will have to leave after this presentation. If any of you has any questions, or any member for Oleg, because he will leave the meeting, if you have any questions, we can address now to him and then to move forward. Actually, Oleg, I have a question for you. Because now, of course, Ukraine is a beneficiary of different aid in different fields, from military aid to EU integration aid, support, economic support, any kind, loans, anything, humanitarian assistance and so on. How do you, briefly, how do you assess international support for the veteran policies and veterans issues in Ukraine from your position as a deputy minister?
Răzvan, thank you very much. A great question in the sense that there was very little attention to the veterans issues even at the start of 2025. We were trying to raise it at a multitude of international fora, and especially with the new Prime Minister, she has championed this as one of her top 3 priorities. And so the veterans issues have been raised, at the higher political level. But what I want to say is that there are multiple initiatives in Ukraine, but they are very small. There are Ukrainians are good at activism. So there are NGOs that are providing mental health support. There are initiative groups that are trying to support veterans in some way or the others. And the international donors are funding some of these smaller initiatives. But I think what we need to do now is to have a major, international support program that will focus on building policies and programs, not only for the veterans that are demobilizing today, because you can mostly demobilize in Ukraine if you have been severely wounded these days. But for the future, when many more veterans will be moving to the civilian space and be looking for economic opportunities and be looking for support, and that's why I think we need a major international support program, which we have already suggested at the Ukraine donor platform, for example, that would focus on veterans, that would build systems within Ukraine. That would, a system of recovery centers, a system of mental health, clinics, a system of reskilling schools, perhaps, and integrating with the existing infrastructure. And that's what we are working on with our international partners.
Thank you very much for all these insights and your presentation. Now I move to member of the panel here. We discuss now about veterans, and of course the title of the panel is quite generous because covers also refugees and IDPs, and I pass the floor now to Mariia about mostly now we're shifting to refugees issues, but still on the same social and let's say human problems that now the Ukrainian society is facing. Please.
Okay, is this working? Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a speaker. And hello, everyone. My name is Mariia KOROLCHUK, and I am the Vice President of Association Malva. It's a community-based organization. We began 3 years ago as a self-organized group of refugee women, Ukrainians, who just wanted to help other women to integrate into Romania, women with children, because in the beginning, everybody must remember it was just a chaos. Even though it seemed there was so much help, but it was so chaotic, not in order, that people were at loss. What is interesting for me personally is that it seems that not long ago, we were discussing problems of integration. Integration of refugees into different European countries. Now, suddenly, we are discussing reintegration of Ukrainians back into Ukraine, which is, at least it's perfect that we're not discussing it after it happens. But why is it important? Me working with Ukrainians in Bucharest, because we're based in Bucharest, I can tell you that now, for the past year, in the air is the main question. What will happen when the temporary protection is not prolonged? Do we have to get back home? Which in the beginning, 4 years ago, everybody treated like a present. Everybody said, 2-3 weeks, and we're back home. We are going to be next to the border. We're going to live in Brăila, in Galați, to be able to cross the border the second the war is over and just continue with our lives. But what happened in these past nearly 4 years? It happened that people started to integrate into Romania. Why? Because there was insufficient funds to continue, for example, for the children to learn Ukrainian. There are not enough hubs that provide Ukrainian activities. Many NGOs that we worked with, and for which I worked for, were struggling to get funds for activities for Ukrainian children, not to forget the culture, the language. And now, when we are faced with the possibility that many people will be forced to go back to Ukraine, because not all have, some have integrated, but not maybe all can get work permits. But these mothers have children, and these children don't know Cyrillic, like alphabet. Yes, they went to Romanian schools. I will not give a hypothetical example. I will give my younger child. My younger child is 9. She has been going to Romanian school since class 0. She speaks Romanian in her sleep. Nobody would ever tell that she's Ukrainian. The only reason that she knows Ukrainian is that we communicate in this language at home. But were she to reintegrate and go back to Ukraine, it would be an issue. And this issue will be faced by many Ukrainian kids who will be returning back to Ukraine. Another issue that we have encountered, because our founding members have also changed during the past few years. We had founding members who returned back to Ukraine because they couldn't integrate in Romania, and they faced reintegration. And what can I tell you? The first year of the full-scale invasion, Ukrainian nation was truly united. Everybody stuck for each other, had each other backs. But now, what I encounter is that we have a different kind of division. It's no longer Russian-Ukrainian language as it was before, political parties as it was before. Now it's who left Ukraine in terms of need and who stayed. So now the Ukrainians who remained in Ukraine throughout, it was their choice with all the difficulties, or even who moved to other places, they believe that they are true Ukrainians. And those Ukrainians who decided to take a chance in another country, those are the traitors. And when Ukrainians who were refugees in the past return back to Ukraine, they're facing a wall from their own people. It's very difficult for them to find a job. And there is another side. For example, there are Ukrainian businesses who decided to expand into Europe. And Ukrainian former employees of these businesses thought, we can get finally a job because we know this employer. We worked for this employer before. We want to work again, but here in Romania, because now we're based here, our children go to Romanian schools, and we don't have a home to return to currently. And the Ukrainian employers are saying, No. Because you left us in times of need, we do not give you a second chance. I also heard stories, because I worked with a documentary maker, a Japanese one, in Ukraine, and we gathered a lot of stories of internally displaced persons who shared with us the difficulty of being accepted by their own fellow Ukrainians when they were forced to move. I know how Ukraine has improved during the war in receiving IDPs, in providing housing, healthcare, access. Now everybody's working on inclusion. But we still have this psychological border. Once more, we are divided by those who left, by those who returned. And we mustn't forget that the future is also in our children. And the children who will be returning, because their parents have no possibility to stay due to the expiry of their legal status in some countries of being, will face huge difficulties to reintegrate. Their parents may face difficulties to find a job or to be shammed by other people. Currently, I have no answer for this. It's just my observations. But I do believe that it is correct that we're starting to talk about reintegration at this moment. And what we must try to transmit the message is that those refugees who will return eventually, not all, but those who will, they can pass on some knowledge. They can become this bridge between Ukraine and other European countries, because they have learned languages, because they have new networks, new acquaintances, new skills. They went through all these livelihood programs that were provided. So they can be an asset once back in Ukraine. Sadly, refugees, there's lots of, one last remark before I move on, because I do believe we have a timeline. There is a huge amount of disinformation that refugees in Europe, in Romania, are receiving a huge amount of help. And this is also not helping for those Ukrainians who stayed and are struggling in Ukraine. I believe if we combat a few fronts at once, if I may say so, we combat disinformation, we take in consideration empathy and stop dividing our nation through means that are artificial, Ukraine will become even stronger, because we are a proud nation, we are a resilient nation, and we are an asset. And we should be invited to all the tables when we talk about reconstruction, reintegration, and any programs that are to help the Ukrainians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariia, for this for the interesting insights that maybe we are not aware here in Romania and in other countries about the challenges and issues of refugees. I pass the floor now to Adam, who's an academic scholar. So we discuss about veterans, we move to refugees. Adam, please, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Răzvan. Thank you for having me here. You know, I will try to split my presentation into two, because there are two completely different topics. One is migration and refugees. The second one is veterans and support of Ukrainian veterans. As Mariia has just offered you a clear picture of the situation of Ukrainians in Romania, let me jump to Poland and show the similarities and differences between Romania and Poland. But certainly one point which should be stressed at the very beginning: it is much easier for Ukrainians to integrate in Poland than in Romania, because of the language proximity. So it is much easier. But at the same time, I would argue that a landscape of Ukrainian community in Poland is much more complex. It is complex because those Ukrainians who live in Poland, there are, I would say, 3 or 4 groups of people who have arrived to Poland in very different in different times, in different stages of situation in Ukraine and at the same time in Poland. So Today, we estimate that the number of Ukrainians living in Poland is around 2 million people. Almost 1 million of them is paying their social insurance in Poland, so they are working. They keep working. Some of them are children, certainly, so so the number is estimated at around 2 million people, while in mid-2022, it was estimated at 3.5 million people. So many Ukrainians have decided to live back home or go further to the west, to Germany and other countries. As I said, there were different waves of Ukrainians coming to Poland, and as a result, it is extremely difficult to distinguish between refugees and migrants. Well, some of them are both refugees and migrants. Some are refugees in a sense that they had to flee their homes in South or East Ukraine, but at the same time they try to integrate, they easily get jobs, they easily try to integrate with the Polish society. There were different, as I say, stages. First, there was a wave of migration from Ukraine 25 years ago or so, which was driven by completely different political and economic dynamics. It was after Polish economy was started to improve, while Ukrainian wasn't. So there were people who were coming to Poland, mainly seasonal. So they were coming for several months and getting back home and then coming again. Then another wave of migration came after Poland joined European Union, and many Ukrainians decided to come, to settle down in Poland, to start their new lives. And all this network, migration network has appeared. How does it work? So if you are in a small village in Western Ukraine and the first 3 families or your colleagues, friends move to Poland, then they tend to invite the others. Yeah? So, okay, he has left, so let me go as well. We already know how it works like and how we manage to survive in different political context. And certainly the last wave of migrants, of refugees, was after the full-scale Russian invasion, and it was a different group, because it was mainly, it was not young men who were willing to find job and work, but it was mainly women with children who were much more dependent on welfare from Polish state, because of children they were not able to start to find a job and to work, and support from Polish state institutions was crucial for this group of people. What should be stressed, that even though we have over 2 million Ukrainians in Poland, majority of them have well integrated into Polish society, into local communities, and with social conflicts remaining relatively rare. Certainly, there are conflicts anywhere, there are conflicts between everyone, but even there are some tensions between Ukrainians who arrived earlier, who have well integrated into society, who speak fluent Polish, and who are unhappy about new wave of Ukrainians who can't speak Polish and, as they say, spoil reputation, yes? So it is very complex. It is very complex, but generally speaking, I would argue that a level of integration of Ukrainians living in Poland is good. It says nothing about the prospects. We don't know whether a new wave will come after the war is concluded and the borders are open and men are able to join their wives or just leave Ukraine, or maybe some of Ukrainian people would like to get back home, maybe, and it is also one of the options. Some of them, after experiencing Poland, they will decide to move to the West, to UK, to Germany, in order to seek better salaries. We don't know. Polish government is happy about Ukrainian migrants. They are well integrated, and they are integrated in two two levels. So first, and it should be stressed, it was a state level. And I think it was a critical factor behind the success because it was adoption by the government of Poland, a single inclusive legal framework where it was extremely easy to get a job for any Ukrainian coming to Poland. And the second layer was a municipality. It was a local level because the most efficient integration of people was delivered by cities, not the ministries. It was municipalities that coordinated housing, local schools, and psychological services and things like that. Yes, so this is how it worked in Poland, and it was relatively smooth. And just if you allow me just a few words on veteran topic, which is completely different. Certainly, well, Polish NGOs and the Polish government, they want to support Ukrainian veterans as they perceive it a humanitarian obligation, but also I think it is an attempt to avoid a future crisis, because we know well that if veterans are not reintegrated into society, if they cannot get back to a labor market, there is a risk that it may lead to a growing, increase of criminal problems, things like that. Yes? So this is an obligation, not only a moral obligation, but it is also a smart thing to do, is to support those people. There are different projects at different level run by Polish NGOs, along with Ukrainian NGOs like Powerny z Żywym and other institutions in Ukraine which take care of veterans, as well as Ministry of Veterans of Ukraine. And some certainly offer trainings, online trainings. Some NGOs offer psychological support. Some try to offer support when it comes to rehabilitation of veterans. What I believe is important here at the Central European layer is to seek synergy, because Romanians, Czechs, Poles are trying their best, and we have some experience. And what I believe would be beneficial is to start a Central European Ukraine Veterans Platform, such a place where we can exchange, where Central European countries, Romanians, Poles, Czechs, Slovaks, others could exchange, Germans could exchange their experience in supporting veterans, trying maybe also to run some joint projects in order to get the synergy of actions, and it is something which I believe would be good and would be beneficial, because it would enable us to somehow sum up the limited resources of every single Central European country. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, quite comprehensive presentation. Or remarks. Now I pass the floor to Khrystyna, who's coming from Lviv, working directly with people affected by the war, either veterans, IDPs. So I'll pass the floor to you, and especially your experience with IDPs, because it's such a huge number we have in Ukraine, unseen numbers in Second World War in any other European country. So please.
Для мене велика честь виступати сьогодні тут і говорити про те, що є основою нашої діяльності.
Hello, it is a great honor to be here and speak here about our organization. We work in Lviv with internally displaced people. If we are to speak about veterans and their reintegration, we use rehabilitation. It's not a rehabilitation, it's habilitation, because after such a long time spent on the battlefield, they can't get back to their old life. They need to learn how to live with their new realities. And the society should welcome them as they are, should be willing to receive them, integrate them. Employers should employ them. Veterans need to be supported, even in shop. But first we need to ask them if they need help, because that might make them feel offended. We should create the maximum comfort for them to return to society, reintegrate in society. It's a problem for the Ukrainian people. They should ask themselves, what can I do for the youth, the young girls, and the young women and men to re-enter society? So what can I do to support them reintegrate in a normal society? I would like to briefly touch upon recovery camp. It is project that is well known in Ukraine and abroad. We have various organizations tackling something similar in other countries. These are camps for psychological rehabilitation for people who have been affected by war. We implemented camps of a day in 2022 for the mothers and children who fled the war and came to Lviv. We granted them 1 day of positive emotions for a happy childhood for the children who are displaced. Now we are focusing on reintegrating families into society, and as of autumn 2022, we've implemented a new format, 6 days for families from war zone, and we have 98 of them across the territory. For mothers and families and young children who have in their family one veteran returning from war. We studied the effects of the programs on the participants we worked with, and we gathered the data, and together with the American organization EU Camp, we published them in Cosmos magazine and in JAMA. I speak a lot about the activity we carry out in Ukraine. It is concentrated on reintegrating people, on granting them psychological support. We need to study these cases and transform them into models that can be scaled up. This way we can face the huge work volume we might be faced with in the years to come. We obtained financial support to carry out this program. We have Recovery Camp Academy. In that academy, we share our experience and the methods we are using in order to create psycho-emotional support groups. We want to set up special spaces in Ukraine and abroad where these programs can be rolled out. Who is interested can contact me and find out more. We also have the information available online. after we published the articles in spring 2025, we were contacted by Israeli colleagues asking for our support in order to roll out a similar program in Israel for their own veterans and their families. If we are to speak about support for families to reintegrate them, or support for veterans to reintegrate them, help can be targeted. Some can be helped to train for a new profession, to get professional skills. These actions are efficient for a positive reintegration of the families. But for veterans, we need a mix of actions that are interconnected and long-term actions. We have been set up in 2014. We benefited from funds from the state at the beginning in the first 4 years, but now the funding is insufficient to be able to implement all our programs because Ukraine is focusing more on defense and on supporting the military. However, the young women and men who come back from the battlefield just collapse in the arms of trauma. So I've studied problems veterans are faced with in the first 7 months after returning from the war zone. 80% of the children who are displaced in Lviv don't attend school online. Schools have resources. They are willing to integrate the children, to enroll them, but because of COVID and then because of the war, many children are socially isolated. That's a very big problem. 75% of the teachers told us about their communication problems when they try to communicate with internally displaced children. In the following years, we shall concentrate on this issue, and I hope it will be a successful story, and I'll get to share it with you in the future.
It's not always good news, but also the impact of the war has on people and how your work is doing to improve especially mental health. We still have 11 minutes. If you have any questions to our panel members, because then I will summarize and we'll wrap up. Any final remarks, Adam? Or there were some questions, or? Adam, some final thoughts on this panel, which has quite a very ambitious reach to discuss about veterans, IDPs, refugees. So any of your final thoughts?
Well, if I may, the topic is quite wide, yes. So we have been discussing migrants, refugees, and supporting veterans. But I think one issue which should be also stressed, and it is important in case of Polish-Ukrainian relations, probably to some extent also Romanian-Ukrainian relations, it is a border between our countries. It is when we are talking about a people who live to Poland, who come back to Ukraine, when we are talking about maintaining the contact between immigrants who live in European Union today and Ukraine, I think it is a factor that should be stressed. It is extremely underdeveloped. It is a bottleneck, crossing a Polish-Ukrainian border, probably also crossing a Romanian-Ukrainian border, lack of a normal gauge railway system linking Polish cities with Lviv or Kiev, lack of proper infrastructure that would allow people to come and go. It is important also in this social aspect, but certainly also it is important when it comes to economy, when it comes to a defense of Ukraine and the support of Ukraine. It is something which has been neglected for over 30 years, and we had to pay, and the people of Ukraine had to, and of Poland also, had to pay the price of this being neglected back in 2022 and onwards. So it is just one additional point I wanted to stress.
And I have also
Thank you very much. Mariia?
One small remark is that me being a Ukrainian and talking to a lot of Ukrainians, and now Romania has become my second home for the past years. The shift, another shift. I love to say the word shift because really nothing is very constant. Everything is very fluid, and that's the superpower of people to adapt to any circumstances. In 2022, everybody was scared of what was out of Ukraine. Now, Ukrainians are scared of what to return into Ukraine. So first, everybody was scared to leave. People were said that they were forced to leave due to circumstances and to keep their children safe. But now when having interviews or talking to Ukrainians here in Romania, and we say, but what do you do when you come back? Do you want to go back? And they said, we don't know what's there, and this is what scares us. And it's a phenomenon when you're scared, you love your country, but you're scared to return. And this is an issue that nobody talks much about. And sometimes it's not scared of being rejected, but scared of the country that you love and scared of the country that you tell your children about, how the nation are proud. We are aware of all the news, but this fright of the unknown, what comes next, what is reconstruction? What is Ukraine after the full-scale invasion finishes? What to return to? And this question is what making a lot of people reluctant and to search means and not to return and not to reintegrate to the country that they actually love.
Thank you very much. As some final remarks, like I said at the beginning, we have quite a very diverse panel. I stress out this because at the beginning, Oleg and Iryna made some presentation about measures that are taken, economic measures, social measures, communication with the society for the veterans, and especially one issue they both said, it's the dignity, the recognition of their sacrifice in the end, because there are almost 100,000 amputees now in Ukraine because of the war. And of course this number is growing, so they have this wide presentation of measures that Ukrainian government is taking. Mariia explained us and have a very sometimes emotional presentation about the situation and being a refugee in a country that of course they help, but all these personal problems, certain issues, uncertainties about the future. Of course, Adam gave us an overview with a focus on Poland, because Poland and Romania, we both share the longest borders of the EU countries with Ukraine. Poland has one of the largest recipients of the Ukrainian refugees, apart from previous refugees or economic migrants coming, so large community of Ukrainians in Poland. Khrystyna gave us very grassroots level perspective on how specific projects are helping hundreds of people in need. And of course, we learn about this shocking statistics that 80% of the children, school children, they prefer to stay online and not go to schools, even there are all the conditions are met, but because of their psychological trauma. One thing that we heard here from our panel members was the issue of integration. So this is a concept that we still keep learning here, integration of all these social categories which are in need and with different problems. But we also learn of different issues, I would say different divisions or fractures, like for instance, veterans, the problems, it's not getting recognition from the society. We learn about refugees, that some refugees, old refugees or new refugees, also another source of tension. We have the dilemmas of many refugees who left Ukraine, who are not considered Ukrainians anymore by those Ukrainians who are still living in Ukraine under difficult circumstances. So what I think these panels try to do is to offer a little bit of glimpse, a bit of overview on how complex and difficult is this situation of people affected by war. Because veterans, IDPs, we didn't mention too much IDPs who actually has to leave everything behind, and they just have to move to another part of Ukraine, like refugees, how they are affected by the war, and sometimes all the situation, because now we're focusing on war, on providing military assistance, economic assistance to Ukraine. Sometimes these issues are a little bit downsized. I thank very much to the panel members. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank for our guests from Kiev via VTC. Everything were fine, so very happy about it. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for our panel members.